Insanity, lunacy, absurdity, frenzy. This is madness. The Vancouver Canucks have displayed something this season that we have never seen out of them before. Never. Not once in the history of the 52-year history of the Canucks. Yeah, it's been a long time, half a century even, and this has never happened. In fact, I can't even remember the last time this happened in general. It probably happened before I was born. Yeah, I was born in the year 2000, so this type of stuff is way beyond me. Let's talk today about the Vancouver Canucks' top 3 point scorers on the team, and where these point scorers rank in the entire National Hockey League. So, if you go over to the NHL points race right now, you'll see a very familiar 25-year-old Swede at the top of the list. Elias Pettersson has 25 points in 15 games played, 7 goals, 18 assists. He leads everybody in the NHL in points this season, and the crazy part is, he honestly hasn't been playing his best. I think a lot of Canucks fans can agree that if you've been watching these games, you've been seeing the results, what we see out of Elias Pettersson on the score sheet, the multi-point games, all the goals, all the extra assists, you could very well say that he isn't even in his final form. We had the quote of Rick Tocchet earlier this week, where he essentially said that Elias Pettersson pulled Tocchet out of his office and said, hey, I'm sorry for playing poorly in the game last night, or whatever. Elias Pettersson is in a place where he honestly can improve. And it's scary because even when he's not in his final form, he is still first overall in the entire National Hockey League in points, and he's making things look pretty effortless in the process. And that's not even to contradict what I just said 30 seconds ago. Elias Pettersson is still making plays, he's still making passes, he's still dangling by guys, he's still making reads, but the point is he can actually be better. His decision-making is not at its peak right now, nor is his execution. He's bobbling a few passes and a few pucks here and there, and so what I'm starting to think about is, hey, when Elias Pettersson is on, when he's on his game, he's fully activated, fully enhanced, and he is at his best, is he a 25-point in 15-game caliber guy? Or is he capable of even more? Who really knows? Even last night, in the 5-2 win against the Montreal Canadiens, Elias Pettersson went pointless. So 25 points in 14 games is what he was at last time, but after the Canadiens game, where a whole bunch of other Canucks got points and Petey didn't on his birthday, for crying out loud, this is now what we have. A superstar at the top of the NHL, alone on the throne of point production, and there is still tremendous room to grow. Not even in the long term, but just within the confines of this season, maybe within the very next game. Pettersson being number 1 is cool, and it's something that we're accustomed to seeing now because he's been this number 1 player for a while. We'll see what happens when the Canucks go out there and play, I believe it's the Islanders next, and Bo Horvat makes his return. Hopefully the Canucks can strike up some offense against that defensively minded Islanders squad, and Petey kind of improves his point production lead. But if we go over to the second place guy in the NHL in points, this is where the true insanity of the Vancouver Canucks comes to play. Because second overall in the NHL in points is Artemi Panarin, and Panarin had himself a very strong game against the Columbus Blue Jackets yesterday. We talked about this earlier in the day, but Alexis Lafreniere was the hero for the Rangers against CBJ, and in this same Columbus Blue Jackets game, you had Artemi Panarin get 2 points on the night. He's at 24 points in a total of 14 games this season, so his point per game is actually slightly better than Pettersson's, but of course, because Artemi Panarin started off that Rangers and Blue Jackets game with only 22 points on the season, there was a brief period in time where the other guys at 23 points had themselves that second and third overall spot, because there's a big tie right now for third in the NHL in points with 23. You've got Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning, 23 points in 14 games, and then immediately after him, you've got Quinn Hughes with 23 points in 15 games, and JT Miller with 23 points in 15 gosh darn games. Now, the Artemi Panarin thing is weird because for a brief, very, very brief period in time, the Vancouver Canucks actually did have the top 3 point scorers in the NHL consecutively. This is because Artemi Panarin's final point of that Rangers CBJ game came in the last, 11 seconds of regulation. Alexis Lafreniere tied the game with 11 seconds left in the third 3-3, assisted by Kreider and Panarin, and that was the point that put Panarin at the second overall spot, behind Pettersson and above Hughes, Miller, and Kucherov. Now, this game, Columbus and New York, actually ended off pretty late into the night as well, so for a brief period of time before this Panarin thing went down, Vancouver, having themselves the top 3 point scorers in the entire NHL consecutively, that's something that has never been done before, ever. The Sedins never did it because, look, Alex Burrows, as good as he was never good enough to be near the top of the league in points, and Ryan Kesler wasn't that amazing either. He had 40 goals, yes, and he was the best two-way player in the game at one point, but his point production was not Sedin level. Even if you go back to the West Coast Express, sure, Naslund and Bertuzzi were leading the league in points at some period, with the Peter Forsbergs and the Haydukes going out there and battling it out, but BMO, Brendan Morrison, unfortunately was not at that caliber. Sure, Bertuzzi and Naslund were amazing, but that's 2, not 3. Then you go back to the 90s, Trevor Linden was never really like an Art Ross caliber player. He was amazing, of course. Pavel Bure was a goal-scoring machine, too. But then again, that was pretty much it. Alex McGillney was good with the Canucks, but he didn't have the supporting cast around him to also carry themselves into those conversations of being near the top of the NHL in points. It's only really this year that now you have Vancouver sitting with 3 of the top 4 point scorers in the NHL, if you exclude Nikita Kucherov because he's tied with Hughes and Miller. And if you disregard the Panarin point that he got near the end of the Rangers-Blue Jackets game, and you say, okay, well, at that one brief, very small period in time when Artemi Panarin had 23 points himself before the Lafreniere tying goal, Vancouver legitimately had 1, 2, 3 in points. And here's the Postmate on the R Hockey sub before the Panarin point, showcasing that was indeed the case. The 25, 23, 23 club for PD, Hughes, and Miller. And this is kind of the thing as well. When you talk about Elias Pettersson being number 1, you could very well say that JT Miller has been as good. You can very well say that Quinn Hughes has been better. You can say that for the MVP conversation in Vancouver, there are pretty much 3 names that you could say, and you have the opportunity to not even say Pettersson. You could say Miller, you could say Hughes, you can say Thatcher Demko. These guys have all been phenomenal. I feel like PD is only really the guy that I feel has consistently not been his best. And Quinn, even though he has an off game once in a while, he usually bounces back. He has some good shifts. Even yesterday, there were some amazing steals that Quinn Hughes had. He stood out to me in a very positive way. JT Miller has been a beast this year. Probably the best we've ever seen him in a Canucks jersey, and that guy got 99 points a few years ago. He is proving that season was not a fluke, and he is looking so good defensively on top of that. I feel like for JT Miller, you could legitimately start having that Selke conversation for him, and maybe that's just my Canucks bias going out there, but I don't know, we've made the comparison before. JT does kind of remind some of us of Ryan Kesler in terms of the snarl, in terms of the attitude, in terms of the play style in a way. I'd say Miller is a bit more offensively refined, though, but at the same time, there's a lot good going on with this Canucks team. And then, of course, for Quinn Hughes, what can I say about this guy? Absolute rodeo cowboy on the blue line. He has been phenomenal this season. Even in the games where he looks off, because he has had a few off nights, I feel like the magnitude as to what he's capable of doing at his best and what we see normally out of him really negates when he does have a bad game. Even his bad games still are sprinkled with some amazing puck retrievals and dangles in between there. It's tough to find a Quinn Hughes game where he is only doing bad stuff. For Elias Pettersson, he's been more so low-key, kind of snake-bitten in a way, hasn't really producing too much over the past few games. He had 3 points in the Ottawa game, and he had an assist in the Leafs game, but he still did not look his best. Not nearly. So I think it's kind of scary how everything aligns this way, and that the Vancouver Canucks at some point yesterday, before Artemi Panarin's tying assist, had themselves the top 3 point scorers in the NHL. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Where do the Canucks go from here? Do you think PD bounces back soon? And when he does, how many points do you think he's going to be able to score on a night-in and night-out basis? Because he's still producing, even though he's not really playing his best. Quinn Hughes is still doing Quinn Hughes things, and Miller has been fantastic too. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.